now bring in NewsNation legal contributor Jesse Weber. Jesse, this is going to be, the next few days are going to be a big deal. Erik goes today, Lyle goes tomorrow. Where do you think this is all headed?
It's pretty incredible. I mean, their shots of getting parole are strong. It's not a guarantee, but it's strong. Now, why do I say that? Remember why the judge actually agreed to resentence them to 50 years to life in prison. This judge was so moved by the letters that he was receiving from prison officials and by the work that these brothers were doing inside jail. And that, remember, they basically said, we committed atrocious acts. We lied. This is in direct response to Nathan Hochman, who said they haven't really taken full responsibility in accepting what they did. And by the way, there was a little end note with Nathan Hochman, who said they will review or maybe look again at their position once the hearing concluded. So perhaps there's maybe a little likelihood, but we'll see whether prosecutors will sign off on it or not. However, this is a 2 to 3 hour process. Usually it's in front of a deputy, it's in front of the Board of Parole Commissioner, a deputy commissioner or two, and there's going to be a lot of competing evidence. There's a lot of different things that can be considered here by the parole board. Not only the nature of their crimes and what they did during, before, and after the crimes, but also what their life has been like. And so there's not a straight-lined scientific tests by which the Board of Parole uses. They can consider all of these factors and they will make a decision. Now, to be clear, it could take 120 days for the Board of Parole chief to review everything, let's say there is a grant, but then it's up to Governor Gavin Newsom, and there's no guarantee what he's going to do.
Yeah, because I was going to say the parole board rules that they should not be released. What are the chances that Governor Newsom would go against his own parole board, deny that, and grant them a pardon or a clemency and let them walk?
What just happened? What just happened? He actually reversed the decision of the parole board when it came to Sirhan, right? He didn't agree that he should actually be up for parole. So there is an avenue here in which the governor can, unilaterally make a decision with respect to these brothers. But based on his prior decision, he alone can determine whether or not the parole board, he agrees, or he can also, so not only can he agree with the parole board's recommendation or deny it, he can also modify it in some way. And something to keep in mind, if the brothers are denied parole, they may not be up for a parole eligibility between 3 to 15 years. So there's a lot at stake with what we're talking about here.
Any chance one of them gets released but the other doesn't, or that they're treated differently?
I see that very unlikely. Why do I say that? They were in this crime together. Sure, there was different roles, whether or not one was pressuring someone to lie on the stand, but they both, they were both active members of this. They were in it together. They both have been doing what I will say is commendable work behind bars, but does it take away from what the crime was? And you and I have talked about this before. This was an atrocious, cold-blooded, brutal crime where self-defense was never accepted by not only the jury, but never by any court that heard this case. And so we can't forget what they did and whether or not they should get a second chance.
Yeah, I've reached out to you a couple different times offline because I'm like, Jesse, you got to explain a couple things to me here. I mean, don't most people get rehabilitated and find Jesus in prison? I mean, what does this mean for everybody else moving forward if they were to be released?
Well, look, they are doing, again, great work there. They were younger when this crime was committed. There were complicating factors about allegations of abuse, but there were two different analyses, right? There was two different considerations here. When we were talking, what they're doing on the side is actually trying to get a new trial, and they're basically saying we have evidence to prove that we were abused. But I think what Nathan Hochman has said, and what I think the courts have agreed, and I agree with it as well, is whether or not they were abused doesn't actually fit into their defense, because at the time they killed their parents, they were not in imminent danger of their lives. And that is why I don't think they'll necessarily be successful in getting their convictions thrown out and getting a new trial. This parole board hearing is a totally different review. This is about whether or not they're a danger to society. Have they been rehabilitated? What was the nature of their crimes? Can they be productive members of society? So a very different analysis from whether or not they acted in self-defense.
Remarkable 2 days ahead. We're on the edge of our seats. Jesse Weber, thanks so much as always.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.